Triggers. Kanye West and I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. I find triggers fascinating. Words that trigger memories or emotions, often memories of which we have no conscious recollection, till the triggers pull and the hammer makes the bullets fly. Kanye West's recent round of anti-Semitism made a memory from way back in 1974 resurface. A memory where Michael B., one of my fellow Argyle Junior High 8th grade students, apologized to Argylite Kelly W. after uttering a racial epithet about two African-American schoolmates. Michael, who was Jewish, said something vile in front of innocent black bystander Kelly and felt bad for it. Not for using the racial slur, mind you, just for doing so in front of African-American Kelly. The trigger, having been pulled, creates shockwaves. The incident of Michael ranting about Sisters Pickles and alcohol in front of Kelly occurred on a school bus where Pickles and alcohol would hold court to see who, through their seemingly daily harassments of fellow students, they could trigger into anger, into tears, perhaps even a scuffle. It wasn't until 1973 that I began taking a school bus. I walked to elementary school, or to be more precise, I walked to 3 elementary schools. I began walking to school in September 1966 when my eldest brother Mike and twin siblings John and Elizabeth walked me to my first day of kindergarten. They walked me 3/4 of a mile to school, and come lunchtime, they walked me 3/4 of a mile home at the end of my half-day kindergarten class. The Oakland Elementary of 1960s Bloomington, Illinois was predicated on stay-at-home mothers. Until 1970, every student at Oakland Elementary lived within roughly 1 mile of Oakland, and from its beginning until 1970, Oakland had no bus students. Oakland also had no school lunch program. Every student received a 1-hour break in which we traipsed home, ate, and then returned to school. This changed in 1970 when the school district was reorganized. As the redistricting brought busing to Oakland, it also brought a school lunch program. And with busing, Oakland presented 9-year-old me with my first African-American classmates. The students, a brother and sister, among the bus that came to my elementary school. Of course, as Bloomington, Illinois' Oakland Elementary was in the civilized North rather than the racist South, this brother-sister pair were warmly welcomed. Warmly welcomed, that is, as compared to the welcome Ruby Bridges had received in New Orleans a decade earlier. It's hard to say who received worse treatment, the 6th grade brother or the 5th grade sister. The brother was regularly involved in fights instigated by his fellow classmates, while the sister was merely harassed, daily, seemingly unceasingly, seemingly without support from or intervention by school staff. 4th grade me was appalled, but stayed out of the fray, neither helping the brother and sister nor harassing, all while wondering why. Why? What had they done to deserve this? 4th grade was my last year at Oakland. In 1971, we moved 750 miles east, and I began attending Rockville, Maryland's Brookhaven Elementary, along with my now kindergarten-age younger sister Ann, where we two, you guessed it, walked the 3/4 of a mile to and from school, with the 3 older Sids went to Parkland Junior High. Most students at Brookhaven, like Oakland, were within walking distance, but the student population, while still predominantly white, was more diverse. But any fistfights that occurred were due to personal animus or pecking order disputes rather than blatant racism. I got into a pecking order fight early on, something which no doubt clouds my not high view of Brookhaven, though my dislike was almost certainly mostly caused by being a stranger in a strange land. Rockville, Maryland was most definitely not Bloomington, Illinois, and learning new slang, new rules, and new mores was difficult. Looking back, I also find it odd that my parents, really my mother, had Ann walk home unattended from kindergarten at the end of her morning-only schooling. As prejudiced as my opinion of our new home may be, our corner of Rockville was not idyllic, and the thought of having a 5-year-old walk home unattended seems perilous to me, especially as we had moved up to being a 2-car family, making Ann's daily solo sojourn a choice my mother made rather than need of circumstance. Different times, different perceptions, and come the next year, a 3rd elementary school for me. In 1972, we left our Grenoble Drive rental and moved to Stonegate Elementary land, a land that provided us with a far more suburban home than had been our Rockville rock bottom. Though geographically our move was just a few miles north and east of Rockville, psychically it was a return to normal. In Stonegate, there were woods in which to play. A few years later, we had a community swimming pool in which to splash, and from day one, I was surrounded by a population that tended to look more like me than had the Brookhaven one. All of my elementary schools were K through 6. Each of the 7 grades had 2 classrooms, and the classrooms held approximately 30 students, yielding a student body of roughly 400. Prior to redistricting and the busing of students, the only non-white classmate I remember from Oakland was Greg Valentine, a born in the USA child whose parents were Japanese. Racially, the population of Brookhaven was more diverse than Oakland or Stonegate, and the only African American students in my 6th grade class that were within walking distance of Stonegate were my just down the street neighbor Kelly W. and Caroline H. I know I, along with other classmates of Kelly's and Carolyn's, would simply assume that they would be interested in each other because they were both black. And our pre and early teen years assumption was that people date within their own race, a seemingly benign assumption that reeks of the sick concept that each should stay within his own thinking that permeates our society. Kelly and I became friends, would ride bikes, skateboard, play in the nearby woods, and be boys together. And 5 years later, his Howard University professor mother helped me prepare for my SAT exam. On a skin-deep level, Stonegate was less diverse than Brookhaven. While we had a handful of students of African American or Asian descent, Stonegate's diversity was less obvious as it lay in the far greater number of Jewish families in the 5 or so square miles that defined the boundary for Stonegate than had been present at Oakland or Brookhaven. Nearly, but not everyone walked or was driven to Stonegate. We had one bus that brought in African American students from Holly Grove Road, but the Stonegate students within the Stonegate subdivision et al. Were very, very white. Nearly all the Stonegate elementary students went on to Argyle Junior High, and in 8th grade, the above-mentioned pickles and alcohol moved in. Their names were not, of course, pickles and alcohol, but I have dubbed them this in commemoration of one of the forms of torment they enjoyed heaping on our bus driver. I, along with many others, Stonegate-dwelling Argyle Junior High students were an audience to P&A serenading our bus driver thusly. Sweet pickles and alcohol, bus driver ain't got no drawers. I seen him take them off. He threw them against the wall. Them roaches just had a ball. He threw them against the house. They scared poor Mighty Mouse. Loudly and with great vigor as a clapping game as they sat side by side in their bus seat. Pickles and alcohol did not reserve their verbal abuse for our driver. Rather, they gleefully sprinkled it wherever they could. And one day, after they tormented Michael B. about circumcision and bar mitzvahs, he had had enough. And when P&A departed from the bus, he used the N-word in his rather loud mutterings to self. Realizing that Kelly was there, Michael, feeling truly contrite for any insult Kelly might feel, said to him, "Kelly, there's black people and there's N's, and they're N's while you're black." He did. Michael said it, and he did not use a euphemism. Kelly did not respond. I'm confident Michael felt that pickles and alcohol's ugliness justified his ugly rhetoric, and that he'd made proper amends vis-a-vis Kelly through his explanation, action, and feeling with such. I'm confident Kelly did not and would not agree. I only rode the bus with pickles and alcohol for 8th grade, as I elected to move on to high school beginning in 9th grade rather than staying in junior high, and P&A did not attend the same high school that I did. A high school, by the way, that had a small race riot complete with firearm brandish the year before I started there. Kelly and I, along with our parents, became friends, and well after the Michael B. incident, my 1894 grandfather with us, and he literally told Kelly, "You don't have any reason to be ashamed because you're colored." Something I'm certain Grandpa thought was very magnanimous, but which in actuality is exactly indicative of our warped and far too frequently hateful view of other. I don't know if P&A's behavior was indicative of them as people, a response to new surroundings that they viewed with hostility, or some combination of many factors, but I do know that we are very quick to attach negative labels to other, to view other as the enemy, and to grant clemency for our misdeeds as well as those within our tribe. A sickness upon which ye, nay Kanye West, is either stricken or is using as a tool to garner attention and revenue. And this fomenting of discord and hate is absolutely something against which we must all fight. Psst, it's DEFCON 1 that's the most threatening. I'm not sure what DEFCON 3 is.